Just imagine a massive hole in the ice, one that is actually as wide as an entire football field. It has no natural edge, no glacial collapse to explain it, and no volcano beneath it. It is just a near geometric, perfectly circular hole, descending deep into absolute darkness in the most isolated, desolate place on Earth. A US military aircraft crew happened to spot it by pure chance back in 1985, while they were flying over a remote area that was strictly off limits to everyone to begin with. And when they landed, their usual officer didn't meet them. They were met by two men in suits whom they had never seen before in their lives, and as it turned out, they would never see those men ever again. They said only one sentence: "What you saw, you will not see." This is not the beginning. This is just one of dozens of strange and mysterious incidents recorded in Antarctica, the continent that is widely considered to be the most studied on Earth, but in reality, it remains in many ways the least revealed. 98% of the entire landmass is buried under a massive, frozen sheet of ice that reaches a staggering thickness of up to 5 kilometers in some areas. No one has an official answer for what is under this ice, but what we do have are testimonies from real military personnel, deliberately blurred satellite images, and mysterious maps depicting a vast continent that ancient humans shouldn't have even known about. In the next few minutes, you will finally learn the truth about why 15 scientists disappeared for a whole week without leaving a single trace behind, and why they returned completely silent, as if something had erased their ability to speak. And you will soon find out exactly what an elite team of US Navy forces discovered hidden deep inside a massive giant door, 23 feet high, which was carved directly into the ancient ice thousands of years ago. Is Antarctica really just a desolate, frozen continent? Or is it actually the biggest, most elaborate cover-up in all of modern human history? The true enemy here is not nature itself, nor is it the deadly biting cold at 40 degrees below zero. The real enemy here is the strictly enforced silence. It is a military institution that possesses the terrifying ability to completely erase an entire incident from existence and force professional eyewitnesses, pilots, and officers who have served their entire lives to not utter a single word for decades on end. It is a total suppression of the truth. Will the institution succeed in keeping this buried forever? Or will the ancient ice itself, as it slowly melts away every single year, reveal what they tried to hide? An aviation engineer serving in the US Navy was a key part of the flight crew aboard a rugged C-130 military transport aircraft. On the surface, the mission seemed entirely routine. They were flying over a small, isolated scientific research camp located deep within the Marie Birdland region, situated in the remote southwest of the continent, where 15 scientists affiliated with the National Science Foundation were staying. Their mission was to study the weather, taking ice samples, nothing dangerous. The strict rule is a daily radio report, but McMurdo Station hadn't received any communication for 2 days. And in Antarctica, 2 days without contact means the possibility of a disaster. The massive giant plane with its 4 roaring engines could be heard clearly from several kilometers away, echoing across the sky, circling over the camp in tight, repeated loops. Visibility was perfectly clear all around us. The huts were already in place just as expected. The fuel tanks were intact. The refrigerators were all lined up in perfect order, but there was absolutely no movement at all. Not a single person came out to wave at a plane that would be impossible for anyone to miss from miles away. The crew landed their aircraft and carefully searched every single hut. No bodies, no signs of a struggle. There were not even any footprints indicating a direction of escape. 15 adults, These were trained professionals, equipped with enough supplies for a whole month, yet they vanished into thin air in a place where there was simply nowhere to hide. The order came from command. One final search pattern, then return. No more resources for an extensive search. Antarctica is deadly, and death there is not unusual. Perhaps it was just an ordinary accident. The crew returned to base. The file was closed temporarily, but after a full week, an urgent emergency order came in. Immediate return to the same camp. The 15 scientists had returned. They radioed in themselves in a state of total panic. They want to get out of there right now, immediately. 15 people disappeared for a whole week from a place with no escape, then suddenly returned as if nothing had happened. So, what happened during those 7 days? That is what we will discover in the next part, when the crew returns to retrieve them and discovers that the scientists never returned the same as they left. The rescue team moved into action immediately, and less than 2 hours later, a plane arrived back at the remote Marie Byrd Land camp. The scene that greeted them upon their arrival at the location was absolutely not what they had been expecting to find. The equipment was placed on transport pallets in a haphazard, rushed manner, as if their owners were packing their belongings while fleeing from something, not preparing for a normal trip. The scientists boarded the plane. Not one of them said a single word. The crew asked them, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" Absolute silence. They had blank, almost frozen stares. It was much more akin to a deep state of nervous shock than just normal travel fatigue. The crew kindly offered them food and hot coffee, but sadly no one even touched it, as if they were completely unable to move. For 2 full, agonizing hours of flight, from takeoff all the way to landing, not a single sound came from any of the 15 adults on board. And when the plane finally touched down in McMurdo, he quickly discovered that things had become even stranger than he could have imagined. The scientists refused to move, or perhaps they couldn't. The crew members had to manually unbuckle each scientist's seatbelt and literally carry them toward another plane, as if they were walking without any real awareness of what was happening around them. Keep this number in mind, 15, because we will return to it later in a completely different context, when we discover that this specific number is no coincidence. The scientific equipment was never handed over to any party. It was placed in an isolated storage facility and completely sealed off. The rescue crew was forbidden from approaching it. And after a while, everyone knew its true destination. We are talking about the legendary Wright-Patterson Air Force Base located in Ohio. If you are familiar with the long and mysterious history of government UFO files, then you certainly know that this specific name is absolutely not random at all. This base was the official headquarters for Project Blue Book. This is the secret U.S. Air Force investigation unit that was tasked with looking into mysterious UFO phenomena, and a place said to have received non-human wreckage over the decades. The rescue crew was immediately summoned to the commander's office, where 2 men in civilian clothes who had just arrived from Washington, D.C. were waiting for him. The message was direct and categorical. This incident did not happen. No missing scientists, no equipment, no campsite location. Absolutely none of this exists in memory. Flight engineer Brian accepted it with an unsettlingly strange calm. This was not the first time he had been asked for absolute silence. He had sat in this exact room 10 years ago, attending a nearly identical meeting, but that first meeting was certainly not held because people had suddenly disappeared from the face of the earth. The gravity of the situation now felt entirely different. It was because of what Brian saw in the sky. While the doors were temporarily closed on Brian's story, another front of evidence was unfolding in a completely different place on the continent. Aerial photos. Antarctica, as we learned in school, a barren continent with no life and no construction. But some recent high-resolution satellite images have revealed something that really shouldn't even be there in the first place. Pyramids. The official explanation is ready, as usual, natural rock formations. But one of these pyramids is built with such stunning, deliberate geometric precision that its four massive sides align perfectly with the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. It is truly remarkable because nature simply doesn't do this on its own. Rocks don't align themselves with the Earth's compass on their own. This is design, and true design implies a conscious mind that carefully designed it. A single massive pyramid was discovered with a width exceeding 1 kilometer, and it is believed to be the oldest on Earth ever. This implies that all other pyramids found around the world, including the famous Giza pyramids, may have actually been constructed by following this original ancient model that remains buried deep under the ice. So, who could have possibly built a pyramid with such incredible precision under hundreds of meters of ice on a continent that science claims has been completely uninhabited for over 20 million years? The official answer is actually no one. But what if Antarctica itself was actually much warmer at a much more recent time in history than we currently think? In 1818, the famous Peary race map was drawn, which was widely considered the most accurate map of its time. When you carefully look at the southern hemisphere depicted on it, you find only vast open sea rather than a massive continent. Even though Antarctica was not officially discovered until 1820. But much older maps, dating all the way back to the 16th century, actually depict something completely different. For instance, the famous Peary Rise map of 1513 quite accurately depicts the coastline of Antarctica. And the Orens Fine map of 1531 goes even further than that, showing us details that were supposedly unknown at the time. It really makes you wonder how they knew so much back then. The entire continent is shown without any trace of ice. With the vast mountain ranges that we know and study today, all thanks to the incredible data provided by satellites. They actually exist, but unfortunately, they are buried deep under kilometers of solid ice. If you had sailed all the way to Antarctica back in the 16th century, you would have found the same harsh, unforgiving ice that exists just as it is today. So, how exactly did someone manage to draw a detailed map of an ice-free continent at a time when the ice hadn't even begun to melt yet? It seems highly likely that these maps were not actually drawn in the 16th century at all. Instead, they are almost certainly copies of much older, ancient maps. The last time the coasts of Antarctica were actually ice-free, according to the geological record, was millions of years ago. Was at least 6,000 years ago. And the Orange Fine map shows the entire continent without ice, which implies that its original source could actually date back 12,000 years, when Antarctica wasn't even situated in its current location at the South Pole. So who could have possibly mapped an entire continent from the air with an accuracy rivaling our own 20th century technology 12,000 years ago? This very question will lead us in the next part to explore one of the most controversial and dangerous theories in the entire history of alternative science. That the continent was not always in its place, and that something violently displaced it from its original location. Now, at the very beginning of this episode, we ask you to remember just one specific number: 15. 15 scientists who disappeared in Marie Byrd Land and then returned completely silent. Now, when we return to look at other testimonies collected from that same era, we discover a truly chilling detail. At the remote dome station located deep at the South Pole, Brian himself personally overheard other crew members casually discussing the repeated mysterious trips to that same ice hole they had previously seen, all in order to meet with what they quite literally described as visitors from elsewhere. It was a truly unsettling thing to hear. Brian asked directly, "What do you mean by visitors?" The answer he received was not about humans. The description was closer to extraterrestrial beings because, in his words, those he spoke with did not refer to them as people, but only as visitors. A word carefully chosen to avoid telling the whole truth. So, was what the 15 scientists saw during their missing week and at that location the same place those secret trips were reaching? And there is no official document confirming that. But the timing, the location, and the absolute silence all intersect with a precision that can't be ignored. Back in 2007, a mysterious image appeared on Google Earth showing a cave opening that looked exactly like an entrance with steps, all surrounded by strange discolored soil. There was heavy construction equipment constantly moving in and out of the site on a very regular basis. The width of the opening was estimated to be about 70 meters. A few months later, the image disappeared completely from the surface. Then, right around the year 2019, that same opening suddenly appeared once again, but this time with lower resolution. Even though the new image is 10 years newer than the old one, technically, this scenario is completely impossible. Technology is always supposed to evolve. It simply doesn't regress like this, unless someone is intentionally blurring the image to hide the truth. And in April 2002, an American newspaper published a sensational story. A dedicated film crew from a professional production company was busy documenting some alleged archaeological excavations located deep 3 kilometers under the thick ice. The crew disappeared. Navy rescue teams eventually recovered their scattered equipment along with a single mysterious videotape. The officers who carefully watched the footage and later described it confirmed that it revealed a truly stunning view, showcasing an ancient pyramid temple buried deep 3 kilometers under the ice. The Army confiscated the entire take. The production company sued to get it back, but they unfortunately lost the case, and as a result, they were forced to close their doors just a few years later. Another coincidence? Or a recurring pattern of one major cover-up operation? In all honesty, not all of these stories are equal in credibility. The story of the hole that Brian saw does not have any known photographic documentation to this day. No other independent witnesses have confirmed it by name. His account deserves respect, but also a measure of caution. In contrast, sightings of mysterious silver discs over Antarctica have been documented by several independent flight crews across many different time periods, and this fact certainly gives the reports much greater weight. Now, some of the photos of the pyramids are just natural pointed rocks. There is really no doubt about that at all. But the pyramid has sides that align perfectly with the cardinal directions. This is a detail that is difficult to explain by geological coincidence alone. As for the story of Spartan 1 inside the octagonal structure, it is also based on only one witness who has refused to reveal his full identity or his military unit to this day. It is documented with rich details, but is not independently verified. There is one specific, compelling reason that makes this particular matter quite different from your typical conspiracy theories. The Antarctic Treaty itself was actually signed back in 1959, right at the height of the Cold War, by 12 different nations. And it divided the continent into zones of influence that have not been officially breached since then, according to everything that has been made public. But more than 99% of the continent's area which is larger than the entire United States, is completely off limits to any ordinary person, regardless of their resources. Tourist trips, yes, but they are restricted to predetermined areas. And now, the square kilometers around that alleged hole are a complete no-fly zone. The official justification is protecting the ecosystem, but the surface is practically dead already. So what environment are they protecting here? There is no real ecosystem that warrants all this secrecy. The real question is not about the surface, but about what lies beneath it. Let's put the three threads together. A military pilot saw a mysterious hole surrounded by intense activity. Researchers disappeared for a whole week and returned completely silent. And an elite team entered a mysterious, thousands of years old structure, a large part of which is still inhabited today by something truly non-human. 3 separate testimonies from 3 different eras, all pointing in the exact same direction. There is something under the ice much larger than we can possibly imagine, and someone has decided that our knowing about it is an inevitable, dangerous threat. So what happens if this ice melts one day, even just partially, due to the ongoing effects of global warming? What if everything they have tried to hide from us for so many decades was suddenly revealed before the eyes of the whole world all at once? My question to you, in all honesty, if you were given the choice between knowing the whole truth, even if it were terrifying, or remaining in safe ignorance, which would you choose? Keep your answer to yourself in the comments. For me, because the establishment that has been burying this file for decades is betting that most of us will choose ignorance. If you are the type who prefers to choose to face the truth, no matter how cold it may be, then subscribe to the channel for the upcoming episodes, my friend. Stay safe.